Not many jobs require tighter security than President of the United States, and those tasked with protecting the nation's chief executive must be ready for absolutely anything. Threats to the president are unpredictable by nature, but over the years the Secret Service has developed an incredibly deep bag of tricks when it comes to threat detection, security, and emergency response. Here are 10 insane tactics that you probably didn't know the Secret Service employs to keep those who have led our country safe and sound. First and foremost, any immediate threat to the president's safety must be dealt with swiftly and decisively. The presidential limousine, which bears the unofficial codename The Beast, is always accompanied by a phalanx of vehicles, one of which is invariably a discreet black van, several vehicles behind the president. This van carries the Counter Assault Team, or CAT, which has one specific duty. In the event of an attack on the motorcade, the president's protective detail, the agents who accompany him directly, will hustle him to safety while the counter-sniper units scan the area for hidden dangers. Meanwhile, the CAT will directly engage the threat, with what one former agent calls an unbelievable amount of suppressive fire. A detail on the counter-assault team is incredibly difficult to land. Perhaps 10% of those that subject themselves to the rigorous application process are accepted. CAT agents are strong, fast, and trained in heavy weaponry under conditions designed to throw off their aim. Fortunately, the team has never had to deploy, and they hopefully never will. But it must give the president peace of mind to know that even a heavy threat can be met with an equally heavy response. The Beast itself is a heavily modified Cadillac limousine, with emphasis on the word heavily. It's weighed down with over 7 tons of armor, which is up to 8 inches thick, heavy enough to stop an improvised explosive device or high-caliber gunfire. But Secret Service agents must be prepared for every possible scenario, and in the event that the president does sustain an injury, he wouldn't have to wait to get to the hospital for treatment to be administered. That's because of a special feature in the trunk, a fully equipped blood bank, with plasma matching the president's type. Agents are fully trained in emergency medical procedures, with a focus on 10-minute medicine. That is, keeping the president alive long enough to get to a trauma center, one of which is always nearby whenever the president's travel route is planned. This focus on quick medical intervention saved the life of President Reagan when he was shot in 1981. His injury was initially thought to be minor, and he was en route to the security of the White House before an agent correctly diagnosed a punctured lung and rerouted the president to a local hospital. Agents also spend a great deal of time assessing potential threats, which can be challenging in a country that prizes free speech. Even obvious jokes about attempts on the president's life must be investigated. And if there is even the slightest notion that the suggestion is more than just a joke, the Secret Service goes into full-on police mode. This aspect of the job is known as protective intelligence, and its purpose is just that: to gather intelligence about the source of any potential threat, which may mean digging into their online history, interviewing friends, family, and co-workers, looking into past affiliations with sketchy organizations, or all of the above and more. If an actual threat is found to have been made, agents have their choice of 3 courses of action: issue a warning, commit the offender for a psychological evaluation, or charge them with a Class E felony, which generally carries a sentence of up to 3 years in prison. It's long been rumored that the president has an official food taster, but according to former White House executive chef Walter Scheib, this is not actually the case. Speaking with the Washingtonian, Scheib says that only White House kitchen staff who have a special security clearance are allowed to have direct access to the president's food while on White House grounds. But even so, everything that makes its way to the president, from an entree to a random bowl of pretzels, will have been screened in some way by the Secret Service. When the president leaves the White House, stewardship of his food changes depending on his destination. The Navy sends a personal chef with the president on long trips, but aboard Air Force One, an Air Force chef takes over. Things get a little more complicated on visits to foreign countries, and for security reasons, Scheib couldn't go into much detail. But he did imply that this might be one instance in which Secret Service agents are actually required to taste the president's food to make sure that no dangerous surprises await. With all the handwriting analysis techniques available to modern investigators, writing an anonymous threatening letter isn't the greatest idea, especially to the president. But it still happens, and it turns out that the authors are even less anonymous than they thought. The Secret Service and FBI have teamed up to create a one-of-a-kind ink library that can reveal an incredible amount of information about suspicious documents. It contains samples of virtually every ink ever produced dating back to the 1920s, and it's far from just anonymous letters that come under its scrutiny. Falsified documents from accounting ledgers managers to autograph baseballs have been busted by the library, using a triple-stage investigative process that can identify pretty much any ink on any document that anyone could ever produce. The library is not only in the constant process of refining and improving its techniques, but is also looking to go all digital in the near future, which will greatly speed up its testing process. Anonymous scribes, take note. If your handwriting doesn't give you away, the ink you use just might. The Beast is just one in a fleet of a dozen highly modified vehicles which comprises the president's motor pool. Each one costs over $1 million and is never without its own assigned agent, a specialized mechanic who also happens to be heavily armed. Until recently, presidential limos would be bought off the lot and then modified with aftermarket products, but the stress on the vehicles caused them to keep breaking down. So beginning with the presidency of George W. Bush, the limos have been built from the ground up. In addition to the extra armor and security features, they're all equipped with fire suppression systems, airtight interiors with encrypted satellite phones, night vision cameras, and Kevlar reinforced tires. Agents assigned to drive these vehicles must undergo intensive training in defensive driving, including evasive maneuvers and high-speed precision driving and cornering. The Secret Service learned many painful lessons from the assassination of President Kennedy in 1963, and it's safe to say that a presidential motorcade is today one of the most secure places on Earth. Some presidential outings may seem impromptu, like a trip across the street to a park for a photo op, but exactly none of them are. Wherever the president goes, no matter where that is, an advanced team of Secret Service agents goes first in order to scout out the location. They'll want to be familiar with all entrances, exits, bathrooms, and closets in a building, and the general lay of the land in an outdoor setting. But the duties of the advanced team go far beyond such common sense measures. In fact, when the president travels to another state, the Secret Service will consult with all mental health institutions in the area and make an assessment of any patients that have recently been released. This step was implemented after the assassination attempt on Reagan, which probably could have been prevented had it been in place at the time. His would-be assassin John Hinckley Jr. had received treatment prior to the incident and was the type of potential threat that likely would have merited an interview by Secret Service agents if he were to be assessed today. Systema is a Russian martial arts discipline that has begun to gain a following among police, militaries, and yes, the Secret Service. Its anything-goes style of combat is tailored to extreme situations such as taking on multiple armed attackers and focuses on controlling the attacker's 6 body levers: elbows, neck, knees, waist, ankles, and shoulders, through the use of pressure points and strikes. Systema expert Martin Wheeler detailed some of the techniques favored by the Secret Service in a Discovery Channel special. These of course focus on confronting an attacker with a firearm and directing the line of fire away from a target. Systema combines fluid natural movement with precision and explosiveness, a perfect fit for those all too casual-looking presidential protectors with ice in their veins. When dealing with large crowds, Secret Service agents must constantly be on the lookout. You may think that they're simply scanning the crowd for dangerous-looking characters, but that's a bit of an oversimplification. Nearly any serious threat to the president is going to involve a firearm of some kind, and agents are very specifically trained to spot the many telltale signs that someone might be carrying a gun. First, an agent can near instantly tell if a subject is left or right-handed, based on the presence of jewelry, actions such as lighting a cigarette, and how they hold their weight. Once that dominant side is determined, they can watch for a security feel, a nervous, nearly subconscious check characteristic of shooters to make sure the weapon is still there, especially when changing positions, like going from sitting to standing. The subject may stiffen up on the side of their body the weapon is on to keep it from moving around, or adjust their clothing excessively. Baggy clothing is also a potential warning sign, especially in warm weather, as it can conceal the weight of a firearm to an extent. There are other giveaways that can alert Secret Service agents long before a potential shooter even knows they've been registered as a threat, but they can't give all of their secrets away. It bears repeating that the president's protectors must be ready for literally any situation, no matter how unlikely. Many are also not aware that even former US presidents are entitled to a lifetime of Secret Service protection, so agents are likely to find themselves accompanying those who have served to some pretty exotic locales as they enjoy their retirements. Enter the Water Rescue Detail, whose job it is to make sure that current and former heads of state who love to get their R&R in the water are never far from safety. These agents train in the harsh and unforgiving surf at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, and techniques that they can use to extract anybody from any water hazard in any situation. Only about 75 of the 3,200 active agents have what it takes for what some call the most demanding detail in the entire Secret Service. Further details are shrouded in secrecy, but from boating enthusiast George W. Bush to body surfer Barack Obama, these agents are there to ensure that no water-related mishaps befall any U.S. president, past, present, or future.